Here.
Tara Srikishan. Here. Ronald Lee.
Here.
Patty Sexton. Here. Brian Mekachek.
Here.
Robert Bird.
Here.
Tara Martin Lewis.
Here.
James Talea.
Here.
Pamela Garcia.
Here.
Thank you. I am going to note that George Parton, Douglas Coons, Jeff Holman, Sandy Uju, and Tristan Meacham are absent.
Okay, thanks everybody. So this is technically on paper our last meeting. So we're going to be reflecting and thinking about what the future impact or successful organization might be. But I would like to first start by thanking all of you for your service. It's been about a year or something like that since we were first appointed. And it's been, I think, a slog, and we really put in a lot of time to come up with a learning curve. What goes on with CPAC or with SVCE. I think during did we get a new CEO during our tenure? Yeah.
The interim was finished and the permanent CEO was appointed.
Maybe somewhere in there. And then a new director of grid innovation and decarbonization during that time. So a lot of water's gone into the bridge. Anyway, I just want to thank you all. It's been fun. I've learned a lot. And hopefully it's going to go for you. So let's go to the consent calendar.
If I could also make a correction to the minutes, thank you to Member Brewer for pointing this out. On page 3, item 3, programs roadmap breakout groups, I erroneously referred to members Meacham and Muju as directors Meacham and Muju, so that should be members Meacham and Muju. Not directors.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? So the motion passes. And thank you.
All right, hi everyone. So for this part of the agenda, it'll be quite brief. We ended up briefing our executive committee meeting on the program's roadmap. The slide deck that we presented to them was very similar to the slide deck that you all saw at the last CPAC meeting. There were a couple of additions, but it's also nearly identical to the slide deck that we'll be presenting to the board tonight. The additions were mainly budget request items. And so I just wanted to provide you some feedback on what the discussion was like in that meeting. Excuse me. So the proposal that we have is kind of crystallized into 3 parts. First, there's a request to adopt 2025 and 2030 emissions reduction targets, which is similar to what you guys saw in the last meeting. The second part is the adoption of the decarb strategy and programs roadmap and policy document, which is what kind of encapsulates all of the framework that was developed and the outcomes of not just CPAC input, MOG input, our C9 customers, and stakeholder workshop input. And then the third part of the request is focused on budget and some specific contracts for some of the programs. And so overall, there were a few areas of discussion with the executive committee. Mainly, the first part was focused on how to communicate to the board this amount of material. Because as you all know, it's quite a lot of material. I mean, you guys have spent a lot of time, a number of other groups have. The board packet's quite long. So they had some feedback on how staff could aid them and really kind of digesting what the requests are and what the program's roadmap is. So one outcome from that, for instance, is that we've kind of consolidated the program's roadmap into a 2-pager table that lists them, and lists what's prioritized and how they rank on different evaluation criteria. And so that was one part of the discussion. Another major theme of the discussion was specifically on outreach and communication external to SVCE. And so there were some specific questions, for instance, like what we're doing engaging, or have we already started, or do we plan to engage trade unions, for instance, and some of the other key players that relate specifically to building electrification. So there's some specific questions on that, and also related to outreach and communications, different ways in which we might be able to targets that we're asking for. And so right now, if you say, 40% below by 2025, it's, most people don't know what that means. And so really trying to come up with some more tangible metrics. Like this is equivalent to, X number of cars being taken off the road. And so spending some time doing that for mainly communication with the public. Then the third area of discussion was mainly on the emissions reductions targets. And so they had a lot of questions about the forecasting analysis. What does it mean in practice to achieve these targets? What is the feasibility? And so that was another thing of discussion. And of course, there were also questions about budget reporting and measuring impacts as well of the different programs. But that's the overarching summary. If you have any specific questions about it, please let me know. There's also a recording if you're really into it and you want to watch the full thing yourself.
Do we have time for you to put up for, what is it you have here, like 8 or 9 specific things in the budget request?
We have a converter mishap again, sorry.
Oh.
I think I put them out some of those.
It was in the packet we got,
Yeah.
but do people have questions? Should there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 specific programs, and 6 million change over 2 years, correct?
Right.
And so, do people, this is kind of our work sort of having been through all the different runs of the mixed event force, the fish on diagram, and this is now the final thing, so I'm just wondering if you have any questions or thoughts. And I'm sorry if I showed up, but,
You put it with your laptop.
is that?
You can use your laptop. You have HDMI cable, right?
We have HDMI,
You have HDMI on your right-hand side, I think?
Somewhere.
The right-hand side.
We have the technology.
Why does it keep happening?
Imagine how it's going to be like when it's going to be scary. That's old school.
So while they're doing that on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you think of that?
I thought it went well. I mean, most of the discussion was really at kind of understanding the content. There wasn't a lot of kind of questioning the proposal necessarily. But normally there would be more of that in the board meeting tonight. And so I think it was a good discussion. I mean, it's good to be able to have the opportunity, at least with a subset of the board, to have more time to go to kind of deep dive into the content of the board packet. So I think the other board members will often, ask the executive committee kind of results from their discussion, even though it was just a discussion item. There wasn't an action
I
that
think
we
you can
asked.
do a full screen.
Where's the meeting tonight?
It's in Cupertino City Hall, 7 p.m. And I think it's streamed live as well.
Can you see that? PDF says no slideshow.
Yeah.
And Adobe had to show you the stuff on the slide.
Add just a couple of high-level comments. So, having worked in program development and running programs at PG&E, there's a lot of work and a lot of effort that goes into this. So, I want to applaud staff and all of us that put input into it, and the others. It takes a lot to come up with this. I know how hard it is to do one program. And to try to come up with a whole set out of whole cloth is even harder. There is still a lot of other work to be done as well, because any given program has a lot of implementation details. So the staff has a lot of work yet to be done that we all need to recognize and understand and appreciate. As well, not only the implementation details, but over the course of running a program to know whether or not it's working or not. So to establish the right kind of metrics and tracking. So it's what in the program world is called evaluation, measurement, and verification. So how do we know if it's working well? So some of those metrics and how that's going to happen, I don't think are in there yet, but I know that as the staff works forward on the details and so that all involved will know how things are going, and that's coming. But all this is a lot of work, and so I wanted to say I appreciate and applaud the effort, and I'm really encouraged with a good set of programs and efforts to get started on that I think are meaningful. But I look forward to more of the details, and I know how hard that is. Thank you.
So I will say, one of the things I appreciated about this was that there was great care taken to fit into our primary goal, which is reduction in GHGs. So that I appreciate very much.
Peter, did you want me to speak to the table at all or anything else?
Well, do people feel like, I felt like I'd seen it before, but maybe other people have questions about what these specifically, what the programs are, since it's just a two-year thing.
Can you just add a little color? I can't recall the virtual power plant. 1.1 million over a 2-year period, so.
Yeah, it's a big one. Sure. So the virtual power plant is specifically leveraging generation, such as solar or other sorts of smart devices behind the customer meter to provide grid services. And so storage is another big one. So it came up in a lot of the CPAC recommendations, actually, load management to provide grid services. This is a specific kind of terminology that's used in the industry to kind of capture that. Since if you're aggregating storage from 50 different homes, let's just say, and you decide to discharge at the same time, that's kind of equivalent to ramping a power plant up by that same amount. And so virtual power plant is the term that they use to describe that coordinated response of smart devices. And so this is a bigger item. In 2019, there would likely be an RFI and potentially 1 or 2 different kind of industry stakeholder workshops associated with this. It's very related to activities happening in our power supply team. But there's this customer-facing element, since this is to leverage behind-the-meter resources. So the main chunk of the money would likely be spent in 2020, and one way in which you could spend it is to actually procure what's called resource adequacy from these virtual power plants. But there are different mechanisms that we could use to help kind of support demand-side flexibility to tackle the duck curve. And it's through those stakeholder workshops that we'll figure out what's the most viable, because there's also a lot of regulatory uncertainty related to some of those pathways. And so for those that are really interested in this, definitely let me know and I can incorporate you, I can notify you of those specific workshops or RFIs as they're
There is a line item that is currently invisible that says reach codes, and that's a really important one, and I wanted to ask and request my fellow members of this group. The coordination on how to push building codes forward in the local jurisdictions is really important, and it's one of the key values that SVCE and other CCEs can bring in helping to bring the different jurisdictions together to share resources, come to some common ways of what to put in these building reach codes so that we can push electrification further, faster, for example. And so what SVCE is doing and what Peninsula Clean Energy are doing in coordination is really helpful because, as I've been involved with our local Sunnyvale green building code, it's just really useful to have other other folks, other resources, people all working together on a more regional basis, it just makes it easier on my own city staff and for advocates like me to help push for aggressive decision-making on these REACH codes. And so keep in mind that that's a very impactful thing in each of our member jurisdictions, that to know when your jurisdiction is going to be doing a green building code, when or if they do it, and that SVCE is going to play a role in trying to help make that easier for each of our cities and towns, and for all of us to try to push locally in our own cities to help advance these things as quickly as possible.
So one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about is the Customer Resource Center. And so I have a question for the group and a question for Amy. I'll just ask them both for group first. The first one is, some people had expressed concerns about whether there was enough resources to really do this right. And so how do people feel now? That's my group question. And my question for Amy is, whether do you have any, as you think about this, how do we measure that as how do you know that it's success? So you were one of the ones that had some really good opinions about whether there's enough money to do it.
No, I don't think it was me actually, but it was a valid point. I think it was Brian. You mentioned that website.
I may have. I think it had to do with building a website that if you do this, then something happens, and it just seemed like for the website functionality that we were discussing during that, there just didn't seem enough money in there.
So what do you think about this? Because I don't recall before.
350
Over 2 years.
over 2 years.
I think one of the suggestions was also to try and pool the funds with somebody, Peninsula Clean Energy or somebody else to advance it further. But I don't know, there may even be off-the-shelf programs that consultants have solicited others, other organizations that essentially you can put your own nameplate on it and it has a back end already. But one of those ways to stretch the resources so that you're not inventing the wheel.
Yeah, this number doesn't include some resources being spent in coordination with other entities, in market research and creating actual content, materials focused on building electrification, and that's for the Building Decarb Coalition. And so it may be a bit deceptive, just that number, because a lot of the content is actually funded elsewhere. But just another note on the budget, these are our estimates at this point in time. So within the staff report for each different initiative that's prioritized and that has a budget request, there's a 3-page brief that provides more detail about the approach. Some of the programs are in later stages than others. The Keep Home Water Heater program, as you know, staff have been working on before I arrived here, and others are a bit newer. So these are the ones that are prioritized for more detailed design, and as James was saying. So in the process of that, we may be asking for revisions. And as you can see, the $6 billion, that's actually 60%-ish of what the budget is for the coming 2 fiscal years. We'll likely be going back and making additional budget requests into these different programs. And so one component of the Resource Center will likely be one or more RFIs, and depending on the outcomes of those, we may be going back.
A quick question and comment.
Before you go, can you talk a little bit about how you're going to measure the success
Of the Resource Center?
of the Resource Center? Yeah.
I would imagine for, assuming it's a digital resource center, which there's also still discussion of whether it would be physical or digital or have both. If it's a digital one, there are a number of different digital metrics that can be used to quantify the engagement. Those would likely be very similar metrics that we adopt for kind of the success of that program.
Do you have a sense for, this is the one thing that if you're not doing a building retrofit or you're not buying EV or you're not directly involved in an innovation partnership with the 250,000 SVCE customers, this will be the one thing that they touch or that touches them. And so I'm just wondering if you have some thoughts for what would be a good level of participation,
Like how many unique visits per
or
month?
whatever share of customers who are aware of that.
So Kim's actually leading this one a bit, and Don. So if you had any feedback, Pam, on what metrics or what goals. Within the program brief, there are also specific tentative goals set, but I don't recall what they are for the specific program.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of it in terms of the engagement that we saw when we were enrolling customers. I mean, that's when we had the highest number of visits to our website. We had, at its height, I have to pull up the numbers, but maybe 20,000 unique visitors, which is 10% of our math, 10% of our students. Yeah, so I think I would really want to, and that was a very passive communications, right? So I think we would have much more aggressive targets, because we will actively be asking people to come to something, which is a very different ask to this point in time. So using the existing numbers is maybe like at a minimum benchmark, when we ask people to do nothing, but just stay enrolled, to an active engagement is going to probably be a much higher target.
So other comments on this before we move on?
Any questions or comments? So my understanding of Mary Jo, who now departed, was the lead on this. Has there already been staff replacement, or do you feel like you've got good coverage on the Customer Resource Center effort?
We're still staffing up.
Okay.
So Mary Jo hasn't, Sarah
I'm sorry.
Sarah Jo hasn't been.
Sarah Jo.
That position hasn't been filled. I have one staff member joining January 2nd. There's another headcount I'm trying to fill.
Okay.
I believe on Don Ray's team, there are 4 additional headcount. So we're stepping up,
Okay.
and that takes time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I was working with
Yeah.
Sarah Jo on this, under me and Dawn.
Yeah.
So it was already a team effort, so
Yeah.
it's still.
Yeah. So my comment, thank you. My comment was that about 3 years ago, I had learned of there's an entity called Community Climate Solutions that does a greenhouse gas community engagement
That's Lisa.
platform. Lisa Altieri out of Palo Alto. I just recently, just last month, saw it again, the latest version, and some planned upgrades that are happening January, February. I'm actually very impressed at what it looks like now. It wouldn't be exactly what would be needed. There'd be some things that would be, particular to SVCE for some of the unique things about SVCE, but just that, to Don's point, it seems like a good candidate to at least consider for, and I have no self-interest in this, that she seems to have done a really good job at pulling together a lot of resources about electrification, about all sorts of, pretty much every topic for reduction in GHGs. And there's a lot of built-in metrics and things in there. And so I was thinking of just in my own city of Sunnydale, to push for it to be strongly considered it to be the platform for our community engagement effort. But it'd be better for my city if there was one platform for GHG reduction that's used across our entire service territory, because it's just easier that way. And the cost is really amazingly low. For the city of Sunnydale, Lisa was saying it's just $8,000 a year, and an initial $3,000 to set up. And it's built where you just plug in some things. There'd be other functionality that would be needed, but there's a great core that's already there. And so $8,000 a year for just the Sunnydale bit. Sunnydale is a fairly big city, so if you extrapolate that to the entire service territory, that wouldn't be a big hit in the budget to have a nice core platform that, you decide, maybe that's behind the first screen that's all SVCE, but it's worth considering. It looks really, really impressive at this point.
So who's that?
Lisa Altieri.
Is it live now somewhere?
Oh yeah, Menlo Park uses it, Fremont uses it. So the Menlo Challenge uses this tool, and then if you look up Fremont, the Fremont Challenge, but the organizational name is Community Climate Solution, and I think it's communityclimate.org is the main website for Lisa's. It's a nonprofit, and she's gotten additional grant money to support what she's been doing.
Okay, so any other comments on this, because we should move on. Okay, thank you. So, you can get up and walk around so you can get more.
So, one of the things that Peter asked for on our closing day was to go through some questions and look at what we can, looking back, looking forward on what's going on. And so, one of the big questions that came up was, so what worked well for you? How did it meet your expectations? How did the CPAC meet your expectations for naming food truck players? So I thought we might start with that. No, it's good. It just has to decompress, right? Well, this is nice and warm, actually. There's a benefit here.
It's not an efficient heating device, though. It is electric, so there's no carbon footprint.
Okay, so kind of to set this, yes.
One thing that really was amazing was the SVCE staff being prepared every week and keeping us on track, along with our chair and vice chair. And sat on a few meetings, and I've sat meetings, and you guys did way better than I did. So that was definitely positive. That is my laptop for equipment today.
Okay, so your is the staff.
Yeah. Along with the chair and vice chair.
So staff and chair
Yeah.
kept it organized.
Yeah, and there was a lot of communication that the rest of us didn't hear.
Okay. So that exceeded your expectations. Did you have anything that didn't work well for you, that you expected and didn't get, or hoped for and didn't get? You don't have to answer right now. I also put down notepads for anybody for, as you think of ideas and so forth. If you would rather write it down, we can always stick it up here later. So, yes, James.
So part of the impetus to having this group was that it seemed to some of us advocates that had been involved with the SVCE for a while that there was not enough input collected and received and or acknowledged and something done with by some of the staff, former staff, and so just having this group for this particular period of time during this critical program strategy development area, I think was very important in meeting the expectations of getting community input from all of us community members in a way that has clearly been appreciated, evaluated, and used. And that was not the case before this existed. in my perspective.
So you established the CPAC.
Establish the CPAC in order to have an avenue for input from the community that was meaningful and valued and taken into account in SVCE decisions. So it's a mouthful, but the overall reason for this to exist, I think it's fundamentally served the purpose. So it's created this new culture of, and corrected a cultural problem that was in existence.
Okay.
I think that maybe one of my expectations could have been unrealistic. So I'll start with that. Because if someone within our community comes up to me and says, okay, so you were on the Customer Program Advisory Committee, what did you do? Right? That's kind of a hard question to answer because we haven't really done anything where you see a tangible output yet. I guess it's all preparing for programs that are going to start working in the future. So maybe my personal expectation was being able to say, oh, well, we did A, B, and C, and something tangible. And then the other part of that would be reporting back to the community. You know, and saying, okay, here's what we did, because it's still, again, not very tangible yet. And maybe with the budget being approved and then being able to say, okay, here's where the programs are coming out, that will change. But I just thought I'd share that from my perspective.
So just to build on Brian's point, I found the fishbone diagram very useful to get an overall context of where we were in the journey. So it would be even better if we had that slightly earlier on, perhaps up front. So I think it only came up in the third or fourth session. Maybe it wasn't created yet, but the earlier we got that, the better.
Just echo a bit of what Brian was saying, is I found it hard to figure out a good way or not feel like I was doing my part in collecting information from my broadly from my community and then disseminating it back out. I don't know that the way this is set up, it didn't seem to really work. It certainly didn't work for me. I don't know if that function of this entity really was all that effective. That there may be other ways to do that, or if there are ways that we, if we're involved in the future, what's some more specific guidelines and suggestions about how to get the word out or how to collect input. But maybe it's just that could be done in a different way rather than counting on me to do it in my spare time.
Capture?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So one thing that I thought really worked was our advisory capacity. Simply the fact that staff had us to serve as a sounding board and can run things past us and get good feedback, from outside the agency and kind of have an independent third-party perspective. I felt like we gave you guys some good feedback, and the fact that it wasn't just a one-time thing, but as you were going across different programs that you were looking at, the fact that you kept coming back with us, I got the impression you were deriving value.
An accurate impression.
The function of us working as a group, and so there's maybe I have a piece of an idea, or someone else had a piece of an idea, but just hearing what someone else had to say, that there's a good useful dynamic and value in a group discussion kind of venue. So whether or not it be in an ongoing CPAC, but in in customer input community workshop kind of things, you get the same thing where you can hear what other people are saying and then add to that, or it makes you think more about something else you can contribute. That it's harder to do on an individual basis.
Piggybacking on ideas
Yeah.
and so forth.
I think that actually is something that really exceeded my expectations, is that it's asking a lot for people to sustain participation in a committee like this for as long as we've been working. But the outcome of that, the benefit for that was two things that you don't get from just customer feedback. Thing one is that SVCE heard from a lot of new voices. There are tons and tons of people who show up at the board meeting and provide comments, and so, at least half, if not 2/3 of this committee were people that are sort of outside the echo chamber, which I think is really valuable. And then the other thing is that by virtue of having stayed on this committee and met every month and heard the same things over and over, we all learn things. And the committee as a group came up a learning curve where when it came time to provide feedback, we had some idea of what was really relevant and what the hope of the particular topic was, and it's not something we just hear about for the first time. And it's actually pretty remarkable that we can put up that budget list and people say, well, what's that? What's that? What is that? The fact is, we know. These are things we've been talking about. So you guys have all been on this learning curve in a way that a randomly selected group of customers just wouldn't, at the present time, have that much perspective.
Anything else that's structured? Okay, so one of the things that worked well for me, and I'll put my 2 bits in at the end, was actually that goes back to the springboarding of ideas back and forth for everybody. So this is an area that exceeded expectations for me, and for me the learning is always foremost, and so I found this a great learning environment. So that was exceeded expectations for me too. So I'm going to just put this aside. I just wanted this to kind of be the overarching start of things and think about where we are, where we're going, and so forth. So the next question that just kind of funnels into this. So what specifically worked well with the CPAG? And I mean, this was what met expectations or didn't expectations, but what specifically and what might be changed? So this is something that we thought would work in small groups. You can use 2s, 3s, 4s. What specifically worked well for you? What would you like to see changed? And we'll take a couple of minutes with that. And again, it's conversation right now, and then we'll summarize at the end. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. Guys, get your. I can count you off and put you in groups if that would work easier for you.
No,
I thought you might like not like to work.
But I guess I'm not clear. So you want what worked, but then what could you make better? Or?
Well, both of those are 2 things, 2 different things. What worked well for you? This is kind of met expectations, but now what really worked well for you in the processes that were done here, in the reports that were given, and all the things that we did, and what you did on the outside and brought back, all the things that everybody went out and did and came back and shared, or whatever worked well for you in that, and what you saw that might have worked a little bit better, or what we might want to do if you were doing CPAG again. What would you do differently? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah. Can do that.
Okay, so
What's the frequency of what that agenda?
from your individual points of view, what are the things that you as a group agreed on that worked well for you in the past? What were the commonalities? What were the commonalities in your groups? Or what worked well? Or if you really have
We'll just go ahead. So kind of starting from the beginning when they did the Saturday workshop where they explained the duck curve, that's kind of the essence of everything. If we could mitigate what's going on with the duck curve, we'd probably solve 90% of the energy problem. So just having that realization and understanding was helpful.
was that new for you? Probably wasn't new for you, right?
I had heard of it, but just to see it on a bigger scale rather than just hearsay was really impactful for me as well. It was brought up by everybody here, but yeah.
What we were discussing was that whatever group is put together in the future, that if they investing the time on a Saturday to understand the duck curve and to really know what's going on, that made, we thought, the group more effective and increased. So the sooner you do that, when you get new people on board, the better.
It's the background information, to understand the problem.
Is it actually the problem that you're understanding, or is it the context that, in which the problem exists?
I think it's both.
Both.
Is it the problem specifically that you're talking about with the duck curve?
Well, I think the background was more than just duck curve that we
Yeah.
did on that Saturday. So, that was a primary element, but there was much more to it that set the stage for the work that you would be doing.
So it set the whole foundation and background for it.
For the group.
So I'm going to say, do that again.
As soon as you put together a new group, do that right away.
At the beginning. Okay.
So I think the mechanics of the way these meetings are going to run is good, because it's been a mixture of presentations, small groups, brainstorming like this, just the variety I think is good. Has been good. And that I would repeat if you want another committee.
Pamela and then George, and then we can.
Something that I think changed as we went along, so we started, early on, I think that in advance of the meetings, we were just getting agendas. And more recently, we've been getting both agendas and slides that are going to be covered. And I think that providing the slides in advance is very helpful. Just so that, we have a chance to go over that and already have gotten our head into a little bit, thought about questions, things like that. But, it's similar to like a workshop. It's that investment in helping the group be up to speed so that we can be more productive in the meetings. I think that's effective and important.
Did you want to add more to that?
That's it.
Okay.
So that, just tagging along with our ideas here, so the thing that for me that's very helpful, I'm more of a visual learner, so to have the practical examples, like when Doug shared some of what he did in his home, when we got to visit the Palo Alto Smart Home, that was great, because I never knew what a heat pump was, actually, I never even heard of it before. And so be able to actually see it and have them explain it, so now you can put a picture to all the others. So for me, when everybody shared practical things, their little presentations, a couple of visitors came in with their, different slides, and even the one that Pam shared with the apartment and kind of the dilemmas there. So the real visuals are really good. With people explaining, this is what I did, I got my charger, I changed my heat pump, I did this, and this is what the effect was. So then we're seeing it in a practical, day-to-day sense. So for me, just having that and being able to hear, with different committee members' experience, that was very informative in my learning process. I'm a visual learner.
George.
So one thing that just occurred, because I didn't mention as a group, what worked really well was the administrative side, where we had a standing meeting at the same time, same place, same part of the month, and then it was booked for the rest of the year. That made it a lot easier to keep the time in the calendar and increase attendance for me personally, and hopefully for other people. So that worked really well. Because other committees I've got on, they book month to month, and it makes it very hard to find time. So I didn't finish one. And then indirectly linked to that, we had a very active and healthy discussion about how we were going to continue going forward as a group and how that might look like if we would continue this particular committee. And so one of the things we were looking at was if we did move forward, the important thing was to understand, to have an idea of what the agenda would look like and then determine the frequency of how often we would meet from that. And perhaps, so if we were to move to say a quarterly meeting, say, or reduce the frequency to then offset that with subcommittee meetings and smaller groups like we did to begin with, or just maintain the current frequency that we have now on a monthly basis. But we felt the agenda should drive that and the content should drive that, because the most important thing would be to keep people actively engaged in the overall kind of mission. Is that an accurate summary?
Yeah, so some of that comes from just trying to figure out going forward to how to make the most efficient use of the members' time or interested community members' time, as well as the best use of staff time, so that maybe it's not a once-a-month thing. It's there's value in the structure, and as George was saying, to make sure that community input just doesn't go away. But how can you change the structure or make sure there's structure, but gives you more flexibility going forward? So it doesn't have to be every month, but maybe it's a quarterly group meeting, and then another one every quarter that's based on a topic that's important to the staff and the board coming up or something. So just to look more flexibly at how to effectively use everybody's time, still have some structure, but have it be topic related and need related. Because there's a difference, I think, going forward than what we've just done with trying to get up to the point of having an overall program strategy. That's a lot of work. It makes sense once a month, and we probably could have used that more. But I think going forward, things are shifting on the needs and what needs to be talked about. And so,
Yeah, so
yeah,
there's a lot there. So let me try to break it apart for you. So the first one has to do with frequency. Should we meet as often as once a month, or this can be successive, it's really have to be monthly. And then the second one has to do with whether it should be a regular standing thing, or whether these could be ad hoc workshops that are scheduled on an as-needed basis. And I think this is a really important question that I'd love to have people's feedback on, because I think George is right that if it's something regular, even if it's not every month, if it's scheduled ahead of time, it's easier for people to schedule. And then the third thing would be the use of subcommittees, topic-specific subcommittees. We did that a little bit early on. Essentially you come to a meeting like this, and its purpose is to set up subcommittees that might be specific topics where people could, be more self-select and be more intensively involved with. And we haven't actually used subcommittees very much since the first kind of half of our meetings. But going forward, maybe rather than meeting on random topics, you have a regular meeting, and then if people want to break off and form a subcommittee to deal with a particular topic, a particular ask from staff or from the board, then they can set up their own meetings to do that. It would be more often and ad hoc. But I would love people to think about whether they or someone like them would be more or less inclined to participate if the meetings were not scheduled ahead of time. Because one of the things that has been great here is that people have actually, the attendance has been really good. And that's one of the reasons why this committee has been successful.
On change to improve, and I should mention this is my personal opinion, not positioning of our shared meeting, our small group, is that I would prefer evening meetings to midday meetings. Kind of blow a hole in my whole day to have a noontime meeting. I've been able to schedule around it, but personally, I would much prefer an evening. And I think also, the choice of meeting time also will inform the set of people who will be willing to attend, right? I mean, if you have a flexible schedule or you don't work full time, then you can go to a midday meeting. If you're, a single parent and you have a full-time job that isn't flexible, then you're just not going to be able to attend a midday meeting.
Mitigating that, though, to George's point, is if you note it in advance, you can at least put it in your calendar.
Oh, I agree. Definitely, the regularity is very good. I'm just saying that a choice of, a midday meeting versus an evening meeting, there are plus and minuses both ways, obviously.
Yeah.
Some people prefer one, some people the other, and we should make that a conscious decision, I guess.
So, one of the things that we talked about at the very beginning was being able to participate via speakerphone or a conference call. And the decision was, way back when, was no, we're not going to do that. And in retrospect, I actually think that was a good idea. I wasn't really enamored with it up
That was
front.
worked well. Not a change to improve, I think.
That was a,
He's saying he was worried about it at the beginning, but he thought it worked well. The fact that we couldn't have.
So I was I was traveling internationally, and once I understood the cadence of the meetings, I could sort of move things around a little bit. But my thinking was that if I was in a similar time zone, then I could at least participate by speakerphone. But the group said, no, we don't want to do that. In which kind of I thought, well, that's not.
There's actually ground hack challenges to that.
Yeah.
But
There were practical.
You're saying in hindsight, you think it was the right decision?
Exactly.
Yeah, the subcommittee meetings were all telephonic, or mostly, I think. Those that we had.
Yeah.
So I have one which is more of a question in terms of would this be an improvement? If the representative on CPAG had some coordination and communication with the that city's board member and the relevant city staff or commission back in that city in terms of, sustainability and things like that, so that we could have, bring the city's comments or concerns back to this group of not just our own individual input.
The way it's essentially working now is we've got, for example, Sunnyvale, board member comes to the board meetings, and sometimes it's briefed by our city staff people involved. And then there's the MOG meetings, the member agency working group meetings, which is, for the most part, city staff, sustainability staff, or the like, that are meeting, like what we do. They have regular meetings with the MOG, and then we have this, and each of them is a separate thread. I've never sat down with all three of them and talked about SVCE together. I occasionally talk to each one of the other people involved, but it's not the way you suggest. It might actually be an improvement.
Well, we have about half the cities have a sustainability or environmental commissions that are made up of residents. It's not city staff. And like, for example, this position in our city is occupied by a person who's on that committee, a resident who's on the environmental initiatives committee. So we actually do have an opportunity in one meeting to have the person who attends the MOG meetings and the person who attends these meetings, and occasionally the person who attends as the board representative all in one place to talk about those things. And we also have active communication by email, including this morning. And so, yeah, I guess one suggestion I would make for the cities that don't have citizen environmental commissions or committees is if you're going to participate in SVCE, it might be good to form one. Because you'll be on the receiving end of these programs and also whatever else SVCE does. And it's an opportunity for the residents of that city to get together and talk about environmental topics, of which this is one.
Our city operates pretty similar, so, I sit on the environmental commission, but also the advisor to that commission is this person that goes to the MOG meetings, and so it's a lively discussion and interaction. I get to hear what's going on in the MOG meetings as well.
You even have an SVC staff person in your.
Yeah, so so it's, but that interaction between city staff and community representatives that sit on that commission is very good.
I think that's a really good idea that the MOG representative, the director, and whoever's on the customer program committee kind of have some understanding of what's going on so that the city is well represented. I tried to do that and to get those two representatives together, but it was kind of difficult. One of the issues was our current mayor, who's on the board of directors, he termed out, so next Tuesday is his last board meeting, city council meeting. And then our city manager sits on the MOG, and he has a number of issues that he's dealing with, and, with respect, the greenhouse gas emissions don't move the needle much for him, so, it was tough.
Mm-hmm.
You do need to have some passion for it to get those three representatives together.
I'm actually surprised, is he the only city manager who's on the MOG?
No, so like you said, only half the cities have sustainability staff or commissions, or, either or. So we do have, in many cases, it's either a city manager, deputy city manager, planning commission, anyone you can potentially fill in. For some cities, it's their public information officer. So some cities are much smaller than the kind of staffing that others have.
Okay, it looks like we're kind of wrapped on the ideas for that, so we have some, I think this is what you were saying, that these two are kind of together, and if people don't have a sustainability, if cities don't, that you want to put this one with that, as well as would be an outcome if everybody had that. Is that sort of true?
One kind of, different comment. We're all at the initiation of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. So, I don't know, there needs to be another committee that initiates a whole bunch of things. This is kind of like a one-off sort of situation. But I don't know if it's worth reconvening a committee like this again.
Oh, it's a one-time thing, it was just to get it off the ground. Once you
Yeah,
get it off the
I mean,
ground,
that's-
then the role changes. Absolutely, there's a different role. This was the startup phase to get the programs, then it's gonna be more on the execution side, and how do you,
Yeah.
One other quick thing, in changes to improve, one of the things that we've had a narrow scope, there's a lot to talk about relative to programs, but there are other things that SVCE can benefit from community engagement and input into, like some other types of policies, legislative affairs, regulatory affairs, and that is, there isn't, other than people showing up at a board meeting or executive committee meeting, not a structured way of doing that. There may be opportunities to add maybe, if there's whatever form this takes in a formal way or informal way, that if there's workshops or subcommittees that are focused on certain things, I would propose that it's not just about programs. There could be a subcommittee of interested community members involved in legislative regulatory affairs, for example.
Is legislative committee the only one, or?
Well, I mean, another one could be community engagement, some
Our next question.
team to help, Pamela's efforts to now, with programs and other things, to try to engage the broader community and getting involved in things. So it's not just a tiny percentage of people involved. And the other subcommittees would be ongoing programs or the program portfolios itself, or maybe categories of programs, depending on how it's best organized.
Okay.
So if we're evolving topics, I guess one of the things that I would like to clarify is, what's a group like CPAC? What does that mean? And
I was gonna.
Eat lunch?
We have the time, and, yeah.
you want to break for lunch before we talk about this? Or
I think that-
grab lunch and
Why don't we grab lunch and talk about it, and let's just kind of, yeah.
Some context that for like a minute, I just wanted to show all of you before you talk about, we kind of already started talking about the topic of, what a future, some kind of community input group would look like. Again, not necessarily related to programs. So this is just a quick view of the amount of committees that we already have, if you were not already aware. So Ambria is very, very busy, because we do have, this is the board oversight on, finances. The executive committee is a smaller subset of the board, that we're able to kind of run ideas past and get some information that helps inform how we present things to the bigger board. Audit, the ad hoc legislative committee, that one is not a public meeting, because we're discussing like our legislative and advocacy strategies. And then, of course, you guys were formed by the board. And then we've referenced them all several times. The member agency working group, they're a committee by the CEO, so not Brown active, because it's a working group with the city staff. And then the risk oversight committee also is talking about some, more technical information that should not be made public for various purposes that I cannot eloquently describe to you. But so that's looking, I think that's like a mix of finance and like energy, risk management and stuff like that. So that's kind of the landscape that we have existing, and also kind of broken down by department, how each of these groups are working with departments. Even though some of these departments, have one or two people. So yeah, just something to kind of think of as you talk about where there may be, and what we've been talking about too, where there may be some needs that are not already covered. And then walks for lunch under the account services community relations, where I am. That is a commercial and industrial customer roundtable. That is like an invite only, working with some of our larger customers who, for privacy reasons, it's a kind of a closed meeting, but it's been a great platform to really look at what they're doing on a pretty big scale.
so what's distinctive about CPAC, when you say a group like CPAC, so what's distinctive about CPAC? So I would say these things. Number one, most importantly, it represents members of the community and sort of everyday residential customers. We have some people that are in this community who are, I would say, advocates. But most of the community is actually just drawn from the communities. So that's the first thing, and that's unique when you look at that lineup, it's unique. And then the second thing is that if there's, I think almost every, if not every community that is a member of SVCE is also represented here. I think we might be missing Campbell or something, but it's broad-based. And then the third thing is, as a regular committee, there is some expertise, some domain expertise within this committee. There's
wouldn't get from just random community members if you had something worked out. So I would say those three attributes are what it means to be life seeking.
So, just like that, please.
So made up of community members as opposed to electeds or advocates. Broad-based.
You mean diverse geographical representation?
Yeah, but that's one word instead of seven.
Sure.
And then the third thing being that, I guess institutional knowledge. Because it's a regular meeting committee.
I don't want more as well, so we're all highly engaged because we've all volunteered to be here and the turnout has been very good for us.
Of course, it's hard to treat like that.
And so this is unique attributes of value or
Not
attributes
necessarily
of
valuable. Just what is it?
Well, we could also say, well, what do we see as CPAC going forward? What are the things that would add value?
That was the final
I
question.
just was trying to provide some context for this question.
Well, I think those are value adds.
Well, I think they are. I mean, I think that we still have the problem that most of the customers are not engaged with SVCE. You can certainly debate whether that's actually a real problem. Maybe it is a real problem. But I think that the perspective, the bulk of customers, the majority of customers, I think it's a really, how people have said this, and the things that work well, and things that meet expectations, is the value, voice of community members and customer members is important. I think.
Well, especially since it's community first.
Right.
I love it.
In the first thing.
So that was the primary reason that some of us said to the board, please do this.
See, I don't see the model speaking for customers, I see the model speaking for the agency.
Yeah.
What do I call this one? Like, future considerations or?
So going forward, what could CPAC offer? Or, I mean, what might the group look like in an ideal situation? What might be the things that they would be doing? What might they bring that would be different, as you said, Gary? It's, this was the beta, right? And now the next step is alpha for the formation and data for the interaction. Now what's the next step that we might look at it in a different direction?
One thing might be, if you look at the list of projects, some of them do involve, such as EV adoption, getting the community not necessarily engaged in SVCE or CPAC, but just the goal of getting off of fossil fuels and electrifying the way they transport themselves and heat the house, whatever. That will take some effort on somebody's part to get people of a different mindset, set.
To build on the point that you said earlier, Gary, that I think that when the Silicon Valley Clean Energy was formed, it got enough municipalities together, and that was driven basically by Sacramento, by the state, right? With the climate action plan. And
It
then,
was driven by local community advocacy.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably separate.
no, but the easiest, as I
Oh,
understand
you're
it.
right, the easiest way for them to achieve their.
Right. So they didn't have to do an individual city climate action plan, was to set up basically a framework, if you will, so Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Then within that, the question is, okay, what does Silicon Valley Clean Energy do from a customer program perspective? So that's when this group was, as I understand it. So now that you've got your first portfolio of projects, of programs, the question is, and Gary, you raised this, like, this group's not required now. What is required? What is required is maybe community feedback on the effectiveness of the programs. Maybe it's outreach within the community to enhance the programs. Maybe it's, and of course, ad hoc task force type activities. You know, if you've got a resource and you say, what's the resource in a group like this? A, they understand the duck curve and what the problem is. That investment has been made. How do you leverage that? The knowledge of the programs, knowledge of the organization. Like, that's now how you actually want to utilize that group, to the extent you do, and they're engaged. You know, there's a variety of alternatives.
Would you say are you stating a need? It's an ongoing need?
I'm saying that you've created a resource, being the people in this room. How do you want to utilize that? Assuming you do, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, to the extent that people in the room want to remain engaged in some way, shape, or form.
The two key broad categories of use of that is provide input into topics in important areas of interest that need to be figured out at the policy and staff level for the entity. And then the other way around, as already mentioned in the second, is try to enhance community outreach and engagement and be leaders in the community and drive participation and engagement related to what SVCE's mission is.
Could you say that again?
In fewer words.
And it's all being recorded.
I heard drive engagement.
Input and then external engagement. Well, I'm saying input into, like what we've done for programs, is to continue to provide community input and individual input, into policy, decision making at at SVC staff and board level. Help be, we're already placed as we can be leaders in participating in programs and showing other people the way and engaging others in engagement in programs and other activities that are important to SVC.
So informal ambassadors to the community.
Yeah.
As well as formal channels to SVCE. Or ad hoc channel, I guess I would say. It's not exactly formal as.
Depends on how the structure is set.
I think also for the broad-based community initiatives, we could act as feedback, could act as a focus group. Like if you have a community resource center, mock-ups for a digital community resource center, you can say, okay, here are these mock-ups, and as Chairman said, there's high engagement. If you out a survey to like 20,000 people and say, hey, here's our website, go beta test it, you know, you're gonna get a very, very small number of people do that, but in this group, we could probably get almost everybody to like spend an hour going over mock-ups or going through a beta version and giving, you know, detailed feedback from a variety of different perspectives.
I feel like you guys are all like helping me with my job. Taking less of a load for it's great.
Did your car wash, maybe?
That's great.
Any last thoughts on this? Well,
Yeah, I think we've captured some of the other, talking about this a bit earlier, when we talked about maybe ad hoc or quarterly, or, you know, depending on needs at a point in time, right? So I think we captured that over there. Yeah.
okay, so,
Your second to last time?
since this is the very last meeting, formal meeting for this group, I thought it might be nice to do a closure on what it was that was most rewarding for us, both from staff and everybody who attended here and sits in the background, as well as for those of us who participated in that. So, what did you find most rewarding about this whole process for the last 6 months or so?
I'll just share some of my feelings about it. So coming onto the board, I really didn't have any true expectations other than I was representing my demographics from Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and Incorporated Santa Clara County. So in that, my first question before even arriving here was, is this just another PG&E thing? And is this organization really true to its mission? And I had a lot of questions, and it took time. And so as for me learning that truly the mission is to care about, you know, decarbonizing and to reduce our carbon footprint and electrify and all the other things that goes along with the whole environmental program, it was really rewarding for me to see that. So because I wasn't certain of the truism, I guess you could say, of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, I personally remained with PG&E up until just a few meetings ago. Surprise!
Welcome.
Good for you.
My newest client testimonial.
Because I was so convinced that that Silicon Valley Clean Energy is true, it's transparent, it really is going to do what it says it can. Before I could be an advocate, I had to be convinced, and I became very convinced. I did sign up for Green Prime, just to let you know. So, and I think just with, you know, and I'm being real transparent here, and so now when my customers, we do hundreds of solar installations a year, and prior to this venue, we had some real concerns about the rates, the pay, the this, the that, and our staff was saying, no, I don't think so, PG&E is still gonna pay them more, and I said, well, they're saying on this card, blah, blah. So I really feel now that I could go forward in our business and recommend it, because there's a lot of customers that we have that are still on PG&E, and I really think that because of what I've learned and garnered from this group, I'm happy to share with people that this is the real deal. And so for me, just my personal standpoint and my personal business standpoint, it was enlightening, and I was delighted to find out that really this group is really true to its call. So it's not just another utility provider. So that's kind of what I garnered. And of course, just hearing and the value that I gained from everybody is awesome. And yeah, so that's kind of what I thought I'd finally share.
Why don't we just go around the room?
I think it's been neat watching the, you know, the slate of programs themselves evolve and seeing that, you know, a lot of what we came up with, I feel like is reflected in, you know, what we saw there on projected earlier today, and seeing, you know, real dollars and cents attached to it. It's rewarding watching that come together and feeling like you know, we're having an impact.
Thank you.
Well, I think for me, you know, I think like a lot of people around the table is sort of, you do a lot of things personally, environmentally, and you may be involved locally with small groups doing things environmentally. This, I think, what I found interesting, it seems like the ideas and other things that came forward from myself as part of this group and from the group itself means that we're putting something in a little bit larger picture that can have a larger impact. And so I think that that's what I found personally rewarding.
I've always had an interest in sustainability, and to be able to contribute something through this volunteering for Silicon Valley Clean Energy Customer Program Advisory Committee has been interesting to see what's going on kind of behind the scenes, behind your electric bill. And that's been somewhat rewarding. And you know, as I look at what's going on right now, you look at different approaches to reduce carbon, and one is a carbon tax. They've tried that in Canada, and it's met with a lot of resistance. And in France, like, there's violence right now, you know. And that's what, and I think that Sacramento took a different approach, and this is the embodiment of that approach. So I think that's good. And then my final comment is, my daughter had to do something at school. She's a sophomore, and she had to do a 4-minute presentation, and she came up with a couple of different topics, and I was able to convince her that global warming is a huge issue that she's going to have to face in her lifetime. And she was not very keen on it, but she ended up doing a good presentation. And her classmates liked the idea. Anyways, her presentation.
That's great, thanks.
Oh, my turn? Okay. I will say that I'm extremely grateful and thankful for all of you because over a year ago now, I was the person who put out an application, a call for folks to volunteer their time, which is very valuable, to be part of this. And also, you know, customer engagement is it's a difficult job. I mean, everyone has a hard job, but it's very, very encouraging to know that you all stuck through it for a year and have provided really valuable input. I will be following up with a lot of requests for, you know, may I use your quotes? Constantly writing things down, like you just said behind your electric bill or something. So it's very inspiring. So thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful for all of you. So thank you.
Okay, so I kind of came in halfway back in June, and actually I was thinking earlier today, my first order of business as a staff member was the CPAD meeting in June. And I have to say that it formed a pretty impressive first reflection of the community. So I've been just extremely impressed by the quality and rigor of the conversation and feedback of this group. But I think the most, at a basic level, the most important thing for me that I've gotten out of this is just meeting and getting to know you individually. And so this is only the beginning.
I need to go. I won't take up too much time because I know everybody wants to share, but I've kind of been a bystander. I don't say too much in these meetings, but it's been really interesting for me to see you all from different walks of life, different demographics, different backgrounds all come together and work on a common goal. I've seen you guys learn more about what it is that we do and see the passion within you guys to share that with your communities, and it's been great.
Well, I'm a latecomer to this group, having only joined the last couple of months. And what's really fantastic for me is that I can see people that share the same passion that I do, and that bolsters me so much in terms of knowing that I'm not alone, and there are people in other communities that are, you know, working hard to share and work on these very tough issues that we're all facing. So, thanks very much.
Well, I think the highlight of my time here was just learning from everyone. Obviously, from all over the valley who are engaged in tackling climate change. And like Pamela mentioned, it was great working behind the scenes and seeing that SVCE this is a very transparent process, and just being able to be a part of that has been a positive. And you know, obviously we're dealing with so many issues, especially global warming, and you can get very jaded, but this was a highlight. This is actually something on the local level that is really happening.
I'm probably the oldest person, so our average is probably right. To me, I guess there are two things from sort of, I should call it technical, is to, because I have a background in physics and engineering, is to see the policy, the things that have to be implemented, particularly on energy use and for people, and how to get over that threshold on individuals' decision making. And then it's been good to make connections with different people in the community.
I guess I've enjoyed most having an impact, I guess, in a very, very small way, but I wanted to when I heard about SVCE, I wanted to find some way to get involved, and so I was happy that there was this opportunity for the
Back there.
I was able to sit into it for a couple meetings, and I think it's inspiring seeing a lot of the community kind of passionate about climate change and really want to push the community forward in taking action.
Eric?
I
thought you guys
it's been great seeing the community represented and everyone having lively discussions, and I've learned a lot as well, so appreciate that.
Thank you, Tara. I spend about 98% of my month with the accountants, the banks, the power suppliers, et cetera, and the regulators, and it's great to hear from the people who we actually were created for. So thank you all again for being here.
Did you want to say anything?
No, I'm just Robert.
Okay.
It's shared ride.
So I think back to prior to the formation of the CPAG, that I and others worked on advocacy and trying to help provide input into SVCE policies and actions, and myself and others were frustrated with particularly a certain former staff person who was in charge of programs then and just was not listening and taking input and doing anything meaningful with any community input or even the MOG input, as it was formerly called. And so it's just really heartening, and I'm pleased to see what's been happening with everybody's involvement from the community, and it's taken with such appreciation and value and used in the efforts of the organization, which was not happening before. It's also nice to, because I've got a lot of background, I think I can contribute. It was always hard to just have 3 minutes in a board meeting to say, even, to offer what I could offer.
So I've really enjoyed working with everybody. This is very different to my day job. It's something different. And being able to work on something completely from the beginning that I didn't have a huge amount of knowledge of, and seeing it through to the end like this has been great. And I think what was really good was the level of engagement from everybody here. Everybody actively participated, and we all live in the same area. So if you see me, come and say hi.
So as you guys probably suspect, this is not that different from my day job, but this has been a great community, and I have to say, first of all, I learned tons, and every meeting, in fact, I actually sort of rely on it now, that every meeting I walk out having heard somebody say something that I didn't know, would never have thought of, or, just created sort of an aha reaction for me. So you guys, this has been a really fun, valuable community. I wrote down 2 things that I think would not have happened with us. One is the focus on customer engagement, which is it's represented in the Customer Resource Center recommendation, but the other CCAs really haven't focused on that. And the other one, which I'm not sure where it came from, but I'm really glad to see it there, is a virtual power plant. Anyway, thanks to you all for everything you've done for this committee.
Well, let me echo that, because it's been a fabulous learning experience for me to be able to see all the different areas of it. I was on the political side when it started, and a little bit on the outreach side, and so to see it come together from the things that you have done, Doug, and the things that you have done, James, in your homes, to see what Pamela was working on with her multifamily units, and the challenges that they had, gave me a different appreciation for the outreach and for some of the ways that we might shape questions and talk to community members and so forth. So that's been extremely valuable to me. And I have a lot of groups that I work with. So this has been a particularly wonderful learning experience for me, because it was technically in an area that I know nothing about technically. But it has such a big impact on our GHGs. So it was fabulous to work with everybody and learn. And that's so. I just can't thank you all again for the opportunity to play and learn. So now I'm going to turn it over to Pamela and to me for whatever you have planned.
Okay, well, I'm handing out a little token of our appreciation and recognition for all of you. I know. It happened to be in that.
Making value judgments?
This time where you have to sit every day.
Oh my.
So, and definitely wanted to get a nice group photo. You probably noticed I was taking.
And then why you didn't hand them out directly. They are inscribed. There's a logo with the logo, look at the flag, yeah. For the leaf, not the flag. That's not the flag, a little bit.
Kept them wrapped too.
This is the nicest bag that I've. Oh, it's pretty good. Just venti size?
And then I would love to, I don't know if we have any other closeouts before we just take a nice group photo, but, this could potentially be the last time we'll see together, I hope not, but, so yeah, if we wanna assemble along the white wall, work behind us. So, that.
Which one?
We'll do this one here. Still powering down, so careful with that.
Should we take that?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Showing our work session.
Anyone want to show off there?
You want to have.
I see.
Yeah, we could, squish
We
it.
need to squeeze a little bit.
I can also have
Turn in.
Yeah.
Turn needs to move up front and
All right, here we go. And 1, 2, carbon free! I'll do one more. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
No, waiting till we're all with this.
The chair will adjourn.
So yeah, we're actually early.
So just one last thought. What I'm going to do with all this, I'll take all this stuff and probably get with Tara and synthesize some thoughts for the board, whether or how, really probably more like how the CPAC could continue, or would like CPAC to continue to do the board's decision. So stay tuned, we know how to reach you all. And again, thanks everybody for all your hard work and your participation and guidance. And have a good holiday.
And thank you.